And so we just went over and we lucked out and fell upon the 16-unit building. That was the moment where investing really became the core business. Like, did we bite off more than we could chew? Why is it so difficult to get money?
For someone who's just getting started, what's the smartest way for them to get their foot into the door?
Everything goes in the cycles. You just got to make sure that you're aware of what those macro trends are. That dictates everything. The scale that you want to do it at, the speed at which you want to do it at. Less than 1% of people are cut out to do what I'm doing and what I did. 100%. And so the 1% of people that are active and doing the actual work, they still need the other 99%. The people that have the money and want the result from it. I looked around and I said, okay, the only thing I have to do to not live in poverty, low income housing, and live paycheck to paycheck is to own a house. And I said, I think I can do that. I was anchored in staying close to my children. I did not want to fly around and go and build an empire at the expense of not being around my family. I was absorbing information or getting caught in the hype of something that truly didn't align with my goals. And it burned me bad. Let's get anchored back into what I even started this for. And I rewound the clock back to my very first multifamily deal. And I thought, like, that's what I was doing it for. I want something that I'm able to enjoy with my family now. I'm able to generate passive income in my life now for me and for my partners. And I'm also creating generational wealth.
What are some misconceptions that Canadians may have about investing in the US?
The fear of uncertainty gets in a lot of people's ways of thinking. The fear and uncertainty of whether a market's going to go up, down, or sideways is all irrelevant when you focus on the numbers of your investment. You can make money in any market, up, down, or sideways, as long as you're anchoring into some conservative fundamentals and not you want to make it your core business and you want to stop doing whatever it is that you're doing and you want to make real estate investing your full-time gig. Let's talk about the two different ways that you can get in.
Sometimes success takes you further than you want to go. Guy Bouchard scaled millions in real estate, flipped homes, bought buildings, and then came face to face with the deal that nearly broke him because he'd built something that no longer matched the life he wanted. Now, what stood out for me in this conversation was why he chose to stop, the reset, the hard decisions, and the move beyond Canada to rebuild a strategy that actually works for how he wants to live. Let's get into it. Guy, I want to welcome you to the show, brother.
Thank you very much, Elray. My pleasure to be here.
Now, Guy, for all the listeners out there who maybe don't know your backstory, could you give us a little bit of an insight? How did you first get into real estate investing?
The journey for me began when I was about 15 years old. When I grew up with not much money. Rich dad, poor dad is a real story for me, but I had a rich mom and poor dad. And I lived in poverty with my dad, but it was a very genuine upbringing and very, very anchored in values and core beliefs. But we were still very, very poor. And one of his friends told me one time when I was sitting with him, he said, Guy, if I could do one thing different in my entire life, the one thing I would have done is I would have bought a house. And I said, that's a very interesting thing for you to say to me, at 15, but I that stuck in my mind. And I looked around and I said, okay, the only thing I have to do to not live in poverty, low income housing and live paycheck to paycheck is to own a house. And I said, I think I can do that. So it just, I worked my butt off, born in Calgary, work hard, I was an apprentice in high school, but that was my main objective. And I saved up money and had that objective. And when I was 21 years old, I approached one of my best friends at the time in high school. And I said, hey, you want to put our money together and buy a house? And his parents sat me down and asked what the hell I was doing, talking to their son about putting money together to buy a house at 21. And, we sat at dinner and they soon figured out that I was for real. And, I just asked them, well, would you recommend anything different us doing with our money? Like, do you own your house? They said, yes, of course. So I said, well, what better way for us to start our life and get started at a young age? So they realized I was pretty serious. And that was my first joint venture partnership with my best friend at 21 when we bought our house. And I've been addicted ever since. So it's never really left me. I've transitioned into commercial multifamily and much different things in the last 10 years, but that was the start of my real estate journey.
Wow, man. Okay, so you were sort of introduced to this stark difference, like rich dad, poor dad, being able to sort of see both sides of the coin, and you get a piece of advice and you just run with it. And then instead of making excuses and waiting a little longer until you have everything yourself, you're like, hey, why not partner up? It's a hurdle that a lot of people take a long time to get over. So right out the gate, joint venture partner, you jump into it, you guys buy a property together. And how do things unfold from there? What was sort of that next step that got you? Because that's home ownership, and many people get into or are able to get into home ownership a lot less in the day and age that we're in. But still, but not a lot of people make that jump from homeowner to investor. How did things unfold from there?
Yeah, that was a little bit more of an indirect path, I would say. I mean, from the first time I heard that at 15 to the when I bought it, I mean, that was a 6 year journey. But of course, I was a kid. So, when I bought my first house, it became pretty clear to me that that was sort of my path. So I was always going to seminars, and I didn't know what Rich Dad Poor Dad was when I was 15 years old, but I definitely learned
Yeah,
about it in my 20s and started to hang around the right people and started to make it, an everyday thing. But with that same partner, we wound up buying a house right away as well. But where I got sidetracked in my 20s was just my business, because I was also a welder. So I founded a business, and my welding business when I was 21 as well. That's when I went out on my own, and so that journey sidetracked me from real estate. I'd always stayed in tune with real estate. I was always into it. It would never left my brain or my heart. But those two houses that we bought when we were 21, all throughout business and all throughout the challenges of life and growing and ebbs and flows of money coming in through business and trying to earn an income, which is what everybody sort of thinks that you're supposed to do as well. It always came back to my house paying for it all. Like
yeah,
all the appreciation of my house, and the pay down of mortgage, the equity that it created always allowed us to dip back in when we needed it. And I was always at critical times in my life able to fall back on that when business or income wasn't sustainable or it wasn't coming in. And so, when I fell back on that after about 8 years, so it was my late 20s where I really started to figure out, like, okay, like I need to make real estate more of a serious play. And that's when I traveled in business, I was going up north in northern Alberta as a welder, and I was building my business. And so that's why real estate fell off the side plate. But when I focused on coming back to my family and thinking about my future, it was a no-brainer decision for me. And so then I came back, and that's in my late 20s when I started flipping houses again, and buying properties to flip them and make it a business. And construction and development was a big part of my background and a big part of my whole business. And me being a welder and working on refineries and big projects, construction and renovation was secondhand to me. So that part didn't
yeah,
scare me either. When I was able to come back and pair those two things up, that's when the light bulb really went off, and it was like, okay, it's, what, and to your point, people have the hesitation or excuses or delays on getting into these things. That wasn't really my thing. It was like, buy something that needs work, do the work, make it better, make your money, and go. So I flipped a few houses, and I partnered with my brother-in-law at that time, and we started really putting together the construction and development aspect of the renovation, or of the real estate business. We flipped, I think it was about 4 or 5 properties that we did, and that's when it became really serious. I still have my welding business at that time, so it
yeah.
was more of it was like a side thing for me at that point when I had my welding business in Vancouver. And and then we flipped a fourplex, and the fourplex was kind of like, it was like, okay, now we're scaling up, now the multi-unit thing is really starting to make some sense. And we talked to the property manager and just said, hey, what does multifamily look like do you have anything that's multifamily? I need your next size up. And she said, yeah, I've got a 16 unit building that's about to hit the market right now. And so we just went over and we lucked out and fell upon the 16 unit building. And we looked at it. I talked to a new partner at that time, my my very good friend and business partner, Kelly Fry. She was the one that I sat down and said, "Hey, what do you think about this journey?" And she said, "This is exactly what I want to do." And I said, "This is exactly what I want to do." We said, "How the hell are we going to do it?" And we just took our fourplex and we just put it up against the building and, went 1, 2, 3, 4. We said, "Okay, if we just take our fourplex construction data and times it by 4, that's, we're
Yeah.
going to, come pretty close on this 16 unit building." And that was the point. That was the moment where investing really became the core business. Like that's when I really became a true real estate investor. That's, we flipped some houses, made some money, but that was, it was still, again, it was like a side project and I could do off the side of my desk. But when I got into multifamily and started getting into that, I would say that I was 32, maybe around that time, that, 10 years ago, probably not even, that was probably even my mid 30s. I think it was 2017. So almost
Gotcha.
8 years ago. That's when, that's when it really sank in and I became a full-time investor.
Oh man, I love the way you broke that down. Okay, so some things I'm picking up as well is, you slowly transitioned into it and then you started skill stacking as well because you had some experience in the construction side and now you pair that up with the little bit of experience you're getting in on the real estate side. You found a little bit of a niche where you could stack these skills and create, even though it's a part-time thing, create a business, right? Flipping houses. And then you stumbled across scaling it. I don't know whether it was accidentally or what, but you're like, okay, so now we can take this that we're doing and we can actually scale it. Fourplex, and that becomes a 16 unit building, which I also like the fact that you highlighted how you stumbled across it, because people are always like, how do I find deals? How do I do this? And it's meeting people, asking questions, and some of these you stumble across accidentally. It doesn't just fall in your lap by you sitting at home, not doing anything. So um, I'm curious. I'm curious to see how things unfold. It's a pretty interesting story so far. Okay, so now we an investor. We scaled up to 16 unit building, times everything by 4, see, okay, the numbers look like they could work here, and wow, we pulled this off now. What's next in the pipeline? How did you progress from there? So now you're officially in the commercial side of things and you've got a taste for that. What was next on the radar and how did things progress from there?
Well, the that point and shoot mentality of just getting into the apartment building, it was very, or shoot first, ask questions later. It was intentional because I had that conversation, with my partner deliberately of like, hey, do we want to make this a thing? And then we were able to, yes, stumble across, but working on the network of somebody who was really helping us and understanding how to get into a deal. That was one thing, but the real eye opener was the process of actually getting that building.
Mm.
Because it was based on a construction model. And so construction lending is for value add projects is a
Yep.
lot different than just buying a place, a stabilized asset. And we didn't know any of this. Like we hadn't been through a commercial application or, any of the construction or before and after repair values that you have to prove and the construction data that you have to show them. And then getting the appraisal to show the projected rents to support the projected rents that you're going to be able to get from these buildings, all, while you're trying to put yourself in front of a lender who's going to believe in you for your first big commercial real estate project, right? So these
Yeah.
were all like the learning lesson that we went through just getting that damn thing approved. And then on top of that, having to find the equity, the down payment to be able to do that. My partner and I had one building, or had half of the money that we needed, but which was about 500 grand that we needed for that building. And so we had 250K, which I got out of my home equity line of credit. I refinanced my house and pulled that money out. My partner did a similar thing. And then it took a meeting with a family member, to come up with the other. Well, I kind of blew the ending there, but it was 60 days, 45 days of us sweating bullets under
Oof.
contract with that, of trying to raise capital. Like we were
Yeah.
really trying to raise capital. That's what we were, and we didn't even know what to do there. We were in front of, we had our nice booklet, and our package, and our performa, and this looks beautiful, and we're going to get the money, no problem. And we went to
Yeah.
events and we networked and we got up and talked to people, and that was really difficult because it was, that was getting in front of people and hearing, oh, good job, guys, like awesome job, but no, not your first
Yeah.
one, right? No, but no one would
Yeah.
tell us that, right? Like
Yeah.
it was like,
Yeah.
why can't we get the money? Like, why can't this money come in? Like, we've got the deal and we've got this, and we were on the phone late one night, and it was like, I think it was like 2 weeks before we were going to lose the deal. Like we'd already spent $40,000 on due diligence. We had, refinanced our house. We got everything on the line to get this deal done. And if we didn't figure something out in, I think it was less than 2 weeks, it might have even been 5 days, something, before we had to remove subjects on that building and go firm. And we were just like, are we really cut out for this? Like, did we bite off more than we could chew? Like, why is it so difficult to get money? Like, what are we not thinking about here? All of this, like we were fundraisers, and in just like without even knowing it and stumbling through this process. And then, then I went to a family dinner, and that's when I sat down beside my auntie, just BSing with her. Hey, what are you up to? What are you up to? She said, oh, I just finished, doing house flipping, and I'm kind of got some money in the bank. And I said, that's, funny, because we're, sitting here trying to buy an apartment building, and, we're short the exact amount of money that you have. And she's like,
Oh
really?
man.
I'm just, because I was like, she's like, how much do you need? And I was like, 250 grand. And she's like, that's how much I have sitting in my bank account right now. I was like, auntie, if you're serious, like, we've got a deal. And
Yeah.
she's like, let me talk to your partner. And, we were able to have a meeting with her and close the damn deal and get the money, the commitment of funds. And we were able to remove the subjects on that building. And then we did. And we spent the next 10 months, crushing it. We spent the next 10 months renovating those units and dealing with the tenants and getting the value increased. The appraiser was probably the biggest headache in the entire thing, because the appraiser was from Vancouver and we were in a tertiary market in Chilliwack. And at that time, like that was before rents went crazy, right? Like this was
Yeah.
before the housing crisis. This was pre-housing crisis. So the appraiser, when we went to close on the deal, his report said, you guys are out to lunch. There is zero chance
Mm.
that you're going to be able to get the rents up. Now, this was when rents were $650 per unit. And we said that we were going to be able to get them to about 900 when we were done. And we knew this because we had just done a fourplex just down the road. Like, we
Yeah.
weren't guessing, we knew. That's
Yeah.
why we were so confident in our numbers. Like, take the fourplex. We just did the same thing. We for sure can do this. And the appraiser wouldn't bite. And he wrote a report basically saying no. And the
Mm.
lenders almost killed the deal, until we had to go and do the work for him, proving it and telling him that he was wrong, collect our own data, show the comparables, pull the reports. And we actually had to get him to change his report with the lender's approval to show that, we knew what we were talking about. But what they did was they scaled back the value significantly from what we said it was going to be, to get more in line with what the appraiser. So we had to come up with more money. That's why we didn't have
Yeah.
enough. Anyway, we're going through all of this, man. This was just crazy stuff that we're just like in it every day. And then we did the deal. And then when we, 10 months of doing the renovations, we did it, we completed it. We way overshot our projections on the rents. We came in on budget for the construction, or very close to, and we increased the value of that building. We bought it for 1.3. We were into it for 1.6. and I 1.6, 1.7, and I think we got the first appraisal at about $2 million. So when we refinanced that building, we were able to pull out about 66% of our original capital, and that's when it was like, okay, like it's game on. And so to your question about what was next, it was like now I was just on the hunt for more buildings. And so we went and did another building in Maple Ridge, which was my hometown at the time where we lived. We scaled up. We looked for a 20-unit building. We just did the math again and applied the same math and the same metrics
Yeah.
with different things, but they all required, but it was another level up because that deal required, 700,000. So now we needed to go get other investment capital. And then in my crazy, visionary fashion, I was like, okay, well, if we're going to do this, we're going to do it right. Let's go buy more buildings. And so we wound up buying, in the following few years, we wound up buying about 4 more apartment buildings, and we rinse and repeated that model. Now, I will say that as much as our glory days were, seemed ahead of us, we did have a project in that mix that didn't go well. And and that those are the stories that people don't talk about, but the
Yeah.
renovation model on those apartment buildings definitely did go well. And it was a project that we stepped outside of our comfort zone on, that really put us to the test and really checked our egos on what was happening and what our business model needed to look like. And it strengthened the base and the anchoring into the renovation side of it, into the rental side of the market. But we scaled up, and we scaled up fast, and we wound up buying a lot of buildings in that short amount of time.
Got it. Got it. Okay. It's that's actually what I was going to say is that when you start into scale there, uh, it's you'll find the inefficiencies or the ways that you need to be more efficient or more skilled. You need to level up those certain skills. But your journey is really a progressive one. And a lot of people like, I want to get X amount of units, and the way you did it was really step by step. And I love you have a great way of highlighting each step and the challenges that came with that, right?
Big.
It really breaks it down for especially new investors looking to get into it. They're like, yes, I want to get into multifamily. I want to be. I don't just want to be a passive investor. I want to be an operator. How do I do that? And it really highlights your journey of taking that construction, doing it on single family units, sort of just fix and flip, and then taking it and then scaling it to a fourplex, and then 16-unit building, and then scaling it beyond that. But you mentioned with the 16-unit building, with the rehab side, your numbers came in basically more or less as expected. So that was less of a unknown variable given your experience. So that gave you the ability to level up your other skills and have things potentially go sideways, pulling it back on track without you blowing up the entire deal. Now, don't get me wrong. I love the way you highlighted that throughout the journey, it felt like this isn't going to work. This deal is going to fall apart. There's just one challenge after the next. And as a real estate investor, I think the key thing that separates those that are super successful at what they do is the ability to be resourceful and be resilient when their back's against the wall and it's like, what now? What now? It's like, just keep going. You don't know what tomorrow, the next day is gonna be like, but you just keep pushing ahead. Now, I know that your journey doesn't end there. There's a lot in the pipeline for you now, and I want to dive into that. I love catering for both the seasoned investor and the new investor, but you did a great job also, if people were actually listening, at highlighting the timeline on a high level, zooming out. Because oftentimes you want to get there and you want to get there quickly, but when you first get started, it's a little slower. And then over time, it sort of becomes a little bit more exponential, where the deals become closer and closer together. They become in higher and higher volume. So for someone who's just getting started, looking back, reflecting back on your journey now, someone who's just getting started, what's the smartest way for them to get their foot into the door and get started?
Well, I'm very, very focused on what people's purpose is. It's
Yeah.
very important. it's very, very important. You know, it can't be overstated for someone to really do the work in figuring out exactly what they're doing it for.
Yeah.
And that dictates everything. That dictates the direction that you want to go, the scale that you want to do it at, the speed at which you want to do it at, you know, what level of participation you want to have in the deal. Like you know, less than 1% of people are cut out to do what I'm doing and what I did. And
Hmm.
I'm well aware of that. I'm a pretty exceptional visionary, and I don't have a fear switch, right? I don't have that. I don't have
Yeah.
a lot of things that prevent people. And that's just a typical visionary. A
Yeah.
lot of people, but that doesn't mean that you can't and shouldn't participate and get into the real estate. It just really determines more about the active versus passive investing side of it. And
100%.
so the 1% of people that are active and doing the actual work, they still need the other 99%. The people that have the money and want the result from it, but don't actually
Hmm.
want to do or aren't capable of doing the work. And so the best advice that I could give somebody, anybody, is to really figure out which bucket you belong in,
Yeah.
and think about that, because everybody says they want to do it, but it's to your point of like, when your back's up against the wall and you have to make the decision of whether or not you're going to put all your eggs in that basket and commit to getting something done, that's going to be your make or break
Yeah.
situation, and you don't want to put yourself in that situation unknowingly. So somebody getting into real estate. So let's talk about the two different ways that you can get in. So if you are the crazy active partner that wants to make it your business, and you want to make it your core business, and you want to stop doing whatever it is that you're doing, and you want to make real estate investing your full-time gig, then it's to get in the room with the people that are doing it,
Yeah.
and partner. I would strongly urge people to partner with people that have the experience, and that have the ability to shore up the areas of expertise that you lack in. For instance, me, it was construction. Like it was doing the work of construction. I knew construction,
Yeah.
but I also knew that I didn't have the capacity to be there every single day managing the project. And I also knew that if we paid retail prices, or that if I was subject to a contractor charging me whatever he wanted to charge me, it could blow up our deal, and it would
Yeah.
be the reason. So for me, strategically, it was making sure that we had that shored up. And I tested that with my brother-in-law at the time and my partner through those residential deals. And I was able to verify those numbers so that I had confidence in what we were doing. I wasn't trusting somebody else to just give me that information and hope that it worked out. And then my partner that I mentioned, you know, Kelly, she was a lot more sophisticated and experienced on the on the numbers side of it, and going through deals and building partnerships and networks. And so with her, with the accounting background, we were able to really rely on each other. I was the boots on the ground blue collar side. She was the white collar, you know, number side in accounting. So we reined each other in, and
Yeah.
and that teamwork, that partnership was essential in our success for our first deal, for
Hmm.
sure. You know, and there was complications with partnerships, and you know, moving forward, that we can, you know, maybe we have time for, maybe we don't, but you know, there's other complications with choosing your partnership wisely.
Yeah.
But for somebody getting into it, it's for sure to pick your partners well and surround yourself with the people that you know can help you, and pay for some damn coaching. Like,
Hmm.
pay for some training, and pay for some coaching, and pay for a consultant that is absolutely going to help you avoid mistakes, and to help keep you focused on, you know, so you're not emotional and that you're making the right decisions. Flip that to the people that are passively investing or just want their money invested into multifamily. It's also to take some training and to do some consulting on learning the game, so you can learn. I'm giving an overview of all of these steps, but all of these steps are like 100 steps each component of it, and there's
Yeah.
about 1,000 steps every time you turn around. And understanding, having a really good understanding of what the deals are and what the risks are and what your team is capable of and what experience they have, that's going to help you really, really understand the deal, the mechanisms and the mechanics of how the deal work for what you're trying to accomplish, so that you can keep the people accountable that you're planning to invest into. So, and then that's passively investing into the people that are doing it, well, and have done it well, and
Yeah.
have been through that process before. And again, that's networking and training and just making sure that you understand what you're getting into. Once you're able to do that, once you're able to really understand it and understand it at a high level, then you can kind of pick the bucket that you belong in.
That was very, very well articulated. Very, very well. Yeah, you know, find your purpose. That's the foundation of it all. Because if you don't know that, you don't know what you're building towards, and you can't be methodical. Because that's one thing I'm picking up from our conversation is your your progression was very methodical, thinking out what, and maybe that's accidental. Maybe in hindsight that's accidental. You weren't seeing every step ahead of you, but it seems very methodical. Sort of, what's the next step to get me in the direction that I'm looking to go. And so I fully agree with that purpose thing, is because people have these ambitious goals looking at just one side of the coin, not not understanding the cost of that side. And most people aren't willing to pay the cost, and there's nothing wrong with that, right? You'd think, oh, I want to be a billionaire, I want to be as wealthy as Elon Musk. But if you look at what it cost, most people aren't willing to pay the cost, and that's okay, right? They'll actually have more happiness, more fulfillment not paying that cost. That actually
Absolutely.
make the trade-off of not being that wealthy to have that lifestyle.
Yeah.
So I absolutely agree with you. Is like finding that purpose just makes it a whole lot easier for you, because it's sort of like a compass just showing you which direction you need to head into. And then the second thing you highlighted as well is real estate is a team sport. And for a lot of people that get into it, they don't understand that it's a team sport. So you need to build a team around you. And it again comes down to finding your purpose and then being very self-aware into where you fall inside of the team. What's your position, and what should your partnerships look like? What sort of partners are you looking for, so that you can full now, whatever sport you look at, right? You can't have five people that are filling the same position. You need to find people with complementary skills that have their own sets of skills, and you can create a holistic team. And of course, like you mentioned, it's all high level, because you could break that down even further as to how to pick good partners fundamentally to avoid unfortunate things going wrong and things going sideways from choosing the wrong partners. But there's another step you added after that, which is get educated, because
Yeah.
that in itself can help you mitigate a lot of risk, even if you are a passive investor. Help you understand the process. Help you also understand if the person you're looking to invest into actually knows what they're doing, and if it seems like this is a high risk, or if there's red flags, right? So that's very well laid out. And then once you get your foot in the door, you can really start pivoting for the strategies that or the avenues that you want to go down, because there are multiple.
Well,
You don't
and
have
it,
to
and it
have all of that figured out, but yeah.
no, it is, and it's the North Star is so key,
Yeah.
because it just makes there's so many decisions to make. There's so many decisions, and there's so many points, things that smack you in the face along the way
Yeah.
for the journey that we as a real estate investor or operator go down. And looking back, I made most of my mistakes were made in because it was in the moment reaction decisions, and I didn't and
Hmm.
you don't have a choice when you're figuring shit out. I mean, that's part of the
Yeah.
process. But if you really, really, truly understood and were focused on what your goals were and what your part in that process was going to be, then a second you need to make a decision, you already know, does this get me further away from my goals, or does it get me closer
Yeah.
to my already predetermined goals? And then it's an immediate yes or no. It's super easy to make. It's way easier to make decisions. Maybe not easy. It's a lot simpler to make those decisions along the way. Who you're going to do business with, and what you're going to allow in your partnerships agreements, and what role you're going to play, and what risks you're willing to take, and all of those things are just so critical. So many critical mistakes are made in those emotional reactional decisions, and they're made because you just didn't put the time in before, and you don't have time to figure that out in the moment. You're not going to
Yeah,
sit back and you're like, okay, what's my goal and my plan? It's like you need to make a decision by 5 o'clock, and if you don't, everything blows up. So, you know,
100%.
so yeah, it can't be overstated. And once you have your goals and you have the education, all your decisions become just so much simpler. And then if things don't work out, you feel a lot better about them, right?
Yeah,
Then honest mistakes are made all the time. And living with the mistakes is so much easier when you made mistakes in alignment with what you were trying to accomplish. But
yeah,
when I look back at all my mistakes, and I've made a lot of them, the ones that hurt the most were the ones that, in hindsight, I knew didn't align with who I was or where I was trying to go. And those ones hurt a lot, and especially when they impact other people. Like, it's one thing to impact yourself, but when you're playing in this game and you're playing with partners and you're playing with other people's money, you know the the mistakes that you make are amplified by about a million. And you definitely want to make sure that if and when those mistakes are made, and they usually are at some point, that you did the right thing based on what you knew at the time.
yeah.
And you definitely don't want to have that feeling. And so just the premeditated work is just so important. I can't stress it enough. Got to put in the work to make sure that you know where you're headed, and then build the experience and the knowledge to make sure that you know what decisions you're even making.
1,000%, 1,000%. Like the way I see it, if I were to try and put it into an analogy, would be, when you find your purpose, and then you have an idea on where that destination is, and now you have a compass that can help lead you in that direction. But if you get mentorship, if you get training and coaching, you already know which direction you want to be headed in. Maybe I'm headed east, so you could just drive east, and chances of you getting there are pretty good. You might get a little bit detours here and there, and maybe you'll take inefficient roads. When you get a mentor, it allows you to have someone that says, you know what, take this road, go on the highway. You're going to get there a little bit quicker. I've done this before. I've been there before. So turn right here, go down there. It might not seem like it yet because you can't see across the other side of this turn here, but this is going to get you there a little bit quicker. So this is going to avoid you from taking that little detour and making that little mistake there. But ultimately, if you have the purpose, you know the destination, you have the compass, you can then base your decisions of, do I turn here or turn there, just solely based on that, and it's going to get you in or closer to where you want to go. So that's kind of, if I were to try and put it into an analogy, I don't know how good that is, but I think that could give people a
It
bit of an
is.
idea. Now, if we were to, because I want to cater this to the seasoned investors, or investors who have experience, they on their journey, and they want to level up, and
Yeah.
you have a lot more information to give you. So I want to try and make the most of the time that we have now. You've been operating in Canada for years, and now you're actively looking beyond. I'm curious, what triggered that shift? Was it opportunity, necessity, or was it something else?
A lot. Like, it's it's common knowledge that Canada doesn't have cash flow. Like, it's not a cash flow country. And
Yeah,
it's also common knowledge that, there are places that you can buy for a lot less that provide you with the same, if not greater, cash flow and revenue. And that's south of the border. The US is the obvious marker for us. I mean, their population and their size is so much greater than ours. Their regulations are so much better. They've got tax laws that are so much better. And I did business in Western Canada, which I would say is probably one of the toughest markets. In Vancouver is one of the toughest markets to do business in North America, right? It's right up
yeah,
there with New York and Chicago and San Francisco and Miami and all the high value, low cap rate places. Now,
yeah.
I was able to make it because the forced appreciation aspect, that was my edge, and that is the edge. To be able to add value to an asset is an edge, and it's a big one that most people don't have. But when I look at it, Hellray, I we you know we acquired I acquired hundreds of units, for I think it was like over 30 to 40 million dollars. We created over 25 million dollars in equity, and we're talking hundreds of units. If I would have applied that in different markets, we'd be talking thousands of units.
Yeah.
And the long-term trajectory of the cash flow and appreciation on the scalability for that and what you get to keep in your pocket at the end of the day, it's it makes me sick to my stomach. Now, it doesn't, because I made the choice, and part of my plan was that I had kids. So when I was contemplating U.S. real estate, and I'm in Belize right now because I'm looking at tropical destinations, but I'm also looking for what does appreciation here look like. Like, I'm applying the same methodology here as I do there, and it doesn't matter if I'm in the U.S. or Belize or anywhere in South America or Europe, or it doesn't matter where you are. I'm looking at what does something cost, what does it cost to fix, and what is the upside, what is the value, what is the demand that I'm going to receive for the property that I'm going to do the work. I'm doing it here because I would imagine that doing it in a tropical destination is better. If I could do my business anywhere, this would be the place I'd want to do it. But it doesn't necessarily mean that the numbers are any better. But exploring, the reason I'm looking outside of that was because at the time when I was doing it in Western Canada, it was when there was still opportunity in Canada, I felt. It was also that I didn't consciously want to travel all around the US when I had 4 young kids. Like, it was when my kids were born. So for me, that was my choice. I was anchored in staying close to my children. I did not want to fly around and go and build an empire at the expense of not being around my family. And then COVID hit right in between all of that, which devastated the market because, for obvious reasons, that the expenses went through the roof, and then, rents got locked in, and it devastated us because we were right in the middle of our projects. But it also would have prevented me from traveling around. Like, that was a black swan that, if I had projects that I was managing across the border in a different country, like it probably would have bankrupted me at that time.
Yeah.
But now when I look at, okay, like, and then I got into land development, which was another that was my biggest mistake. My biggest mistake that I made, because that was getting into something that did not align with where I was trying to go. And that was really the writing on the wall, or the icing on the cake, I should say, for me, of just like having a complete reset and thinking, okay, like, what does my future really look like? Let's get anchored back into what I even started this for. And I rewound the clock back to my very first multifamily deal. And I thought, like, that's what I was doing it for. I was doing it to add value to an income generating asset, be able to take out my equity and have passive income, and then rinse and repeat that model. And we did that multiple times. And the only times where I really slapped myself is for getting into things that didn't align with that original goal. And it was because I got distracted in the moment, or thought that it was the next best thing, or the news was telling me something different, or I was absorbing information, or getting caught in the hype of something that truly didn't align with my goals. And it burned me bad. And it was the only time that I ever really made mistakes. And so your question was, why am I looking abroad? It's because when I anchored back into what's important to me and what I'm doing this for, I'm not doing it just to create generational wealth for my children. I'm not willing to sacrifice the next 10 to 15 years of my life busting my ass in a market that's not going to pay me now. It's only going to pay me in the future. That doesn't work for me. Yeah. I want something that I'm able to enjoy with my family now. I'm able to generate passive income in my life now, for me and for my partners. And I'm also generating or creating generational wealth. So it's a now play, doing something that I love and that I enjoy, that is backed by income that's going to be able to weather any storm of economic up or down. And those opportunities just don't exist. They're just not readily available in our market. Are they there? Of course they're there. But they're diamonds in the rough. And one major city in the United States, for instance, has a bigger population than our entire country. And so the inventory and the options that are available and what is available to you are just so much exponentially greater. you still got to look for the right deals and you still got to look in the right places. And it just
Yeah.
doesn't mean that you can buy anything in any place. But when I realized, when that really, really sunk into me, it was a sad realization that doing business in Canada didn't align with any of my goals. That doesn't mean it's not going to align for other people's goals at all, because there's opportunities there. But just the scale at which that I want to do things and the return that I'm looking for now, that's why I'm looking abroad.
Got it. Got it. And so, firstly, I'm curious though, because investing in the US has been a bit of a topic for quite some time for a lot of people. So it's not like this new shattering news, like wow, the US. But I'm curious though. You take it on this venture, and obviously you've spoken to other investors or Canadians about you switching your strategy and moving to the US. What are you finding? What are some misconceptions that Canadians may have about investing in the US?
Maybe that they think it's tougher than it really is.
Yeah.
You know, it's again, it's like a fear. The fear of uncertainty gets in a lot of people's ways
Yeah.
of thinking. Maybe the misconception is that you're going to pay double tax. That maybe it's tougher. Maybe the misconception is that, the president that's there, or the person, that the people that are in charge are somehow creating more risk and more uncertainty than is there. Um, those are some of the things that I think might be misconceptions for most people. Um, and they're just simply not true. They're just
Yeah.
they're just things that you obviously have to learn and understand. Tax and legal setups are important, so you do have to understand how to structure them properly to make sure that you are minimizing your tax. And and really the fear and uncertainty of whether a market's going to go up, down, or sideways is all irrelevant when you focus on the numbers of your investment, and that's applicable anywhere. You can make
Yeah.
money in any market, up, down, or sideways, as long as you're anchoring into some conservative fundamentals and not being optimistic or over projecting or over assuming on your numbers, which is a mistake that'll burn you no matter what market you're in.
100%. 100%. Now, building on that, what are some methodical steps that you've already taken or plan on taking to make that transition from investing in Canada to investing in the US, to ensure that you're avoiding as much as possible legal mistakes, tax mistakes, um, assuming and not being conservative with your numbers? What does that methodical process look like for someone who's like, hey, you know what, makes sense, I've actually been wanting to do this for quite some time, but you're right, it's the fear of the unknowns, not knowing what next step to take, and not stepping on a landmine sort of thing, to ensure that I can progress. What does that look like for you?
Well, I've been looking, like, I've been in the US for the last 10 years. So the fact that I haven't done active business there, or applied my business model there, does not mean that I haven't spent a significant amount of time doing the
Yeah.
same thing I did in Canada, building my
Yeah.
network, talking to the right people, figuring out what lawyers and what professionals and what accountants, have the experience and the expertise doing exactly what I need to do, which for me is setting up a corporate structure for a Canadian. I mean, that's just, you don't go to somebody who's only a lawyer in the US who's never done those things before.
Yeah.
And that information is pretty readily available. It's only a couple of phone calls with, in a real estate network, and you're going to get that figured out. But again, it comes back to, what is your plan? Like, what decisions you make. The only landmines you're going to step on are making mistakes without actually understanding what it is that you're doing. And then, of course, you've got market decisions or mistakes that you can make. But again, that's all the same. You can make the market mistakes in Canada, the same ones that you could make in the
Exactly.
United States, right? So
Yeah.
those are all, that's all just goes back to the education. But I understand exactly what it is that I'm planning to do over the next 10 years. And my tax and my legal planning coincides with that. And that's setting up an operational business in the United States. And it is also doing it by way of a limited partnership, general partnership structure, because that structure is what avoids the double tax as a Canadian resident. Now, I'm not sure if I'll always be a Canadian resident. I'm not sure if that'll change. I'm not sure if I'm going to keep it that way, but it's not changing for me right now. I'm
Yeah.
not actively looking to change my residency. So I'm not going to put a structure together assuming that my residency changes tomorrow. I'm going to put my structure together knowing that I need to pay tax in Canada until something changes. And that requires me to make sure that I understand what structure that is. And I'm not a lawyer, I'm not an accountant, don't take any advice for anybody who's listening to me, get your own advice. But what I do know, and from what I've learned, is that the limited partnership, general partnership structure is the one that avoids the double taxing, because right now Canada and US have in their tax treaty um, recognize a limited partnership as a flow through company, a flow through tax entity. So you
Yeah.
get an LPGP set up on their side, and then when the money flows, it goes through the limited partnership, which transfers to the limited partnership or corporate structure or entity that you have on the Canadian side, and then you pay tax on the Canadian side. Now, and of course, that all changes depending on who your partners are and what your ultimate goal or how you're planning to keep money out or keep money in and all of that stuff. But though that structure allows you to go and purchase real estate in anywhere in the United States, depending on where it's going, but then you've got tax implications in the different states and all the things that you're doing there. So I know what I'm doing and why I'm doing it. So I talk to the people that are going to help me get there. And I've got a structure set up to allow me to do the things that I'm planning to do. And then the market, like I said, you have to understand the markets and understand. But I do the same thing. What I just said of somebody getting the mentor and to get the consultant and to get the people. I also work very closely with people that have been in the United States their entire lives. And so
Yeah.
my partners and my experts and my advisors are all based doing the exact thing that I want to be doing there. And so all it is a phone call away and, a gut check on a couple of people, and they're immediately helping me avoid mistakes and knowing what works and what doesn't. And tenant laws are different in any place that you go, and contractor laws are different every place that you go. And the states has 52 states as opposed to our, 13 provinces, which really there's only 4 or 5 active ones that you ever do business in, really. And so there's a lot to learn. But I don't go and
Yeah.
learn all of those laws in every single place. I don't get overwhelmed with that. I go and find an opportunity where the numbers work, and then I learn as needed as we go along. But it's pretty straightforward for the model that I'm in. I know that if you buy at X and you put Y in, it's worth C when it's done. And understanding, the mechanisms of raising money or getting legal setups or partnerships or getting capital raising or legal structures set up. That's all just a matter of process. And I've obviously been through a lot of that myself. So it's just applying what's down there. But for someone new, the message doesn't change. Know your plan, educate yourself, and partner with people who know what they're doing.
100%. While you were saying all of this, I was like, it's exactly the same. It's the same. And if you've done it before, you're in Canada, the same rules apply no matter where you're taking it. You're not, like you mentioned, you're not looking to learn everything. In fact, I find that to be one of the common mistakes I see. Even as an investor focused realtor working with other people getting into investing, is some people get tripped up by wanting to know it all on all different aspects of it, and you actually shouldn't try to just learn all that information, because what that stops you from doing is taking action, right? So fundamentally, does this work? Cool, let's get my team in place, let's get reliable people, people that are knowledgeable, people that have done what I'm trying to do, and let's put the team together and let's rely on a collective set of expertise as opposed to me knowing all of this myself before taking action. So I absolutely love that, because yes, all of that applies to investing in the US. You want to get out there, you want to shake some hands, meet people, you want to talk to the right people, put a team structure together, but it all starts with purpose. Why am I doing this? Is this serving the goal? Does this align with my compass? And then take it from there. So I absolutely love that. Now, I was hoping to see if there were a few little golden nuggets or insights into how you're doing it, and you already highlighted that. And again, it's not financial advice. You got to go out there and speak to someone who can give you advice on your unique situation and what your goals are. So question for you, if we were to sort of zoom out there, what trends are standing out to you right now, and what should investors be paying closer attention to? And you can break this up into the investors who are like, you know what, My compass is still keeping me inside of Canada. I get that there's opportunity out in the States, but maybe just like yourself, family purposes, personal purposes, they want to keep it here. And then if you could align it to that, and then maybe you could also align that question to people who are like, yeah, absolutely, I'm ready to invest in the States. I'm going to do my due diligence. I'm going to start building my team. I'm going to start running the numbers. What are some trends that are standing out on both sides of the border?
Yeah, it's a very interesting one because we are in a world of chaos right now. I feel like
Yeah,
there's a lot of shifting happening. And like in British Columbia 3 years ago, you would have never thought that there was any possibility that rents were ever going to go down and that
yeah,
vacancy rates were ever going to bounce back. Fast forward to today, and that's exactly what's happening
yeah,
because you've got people that are mass exodus. The cost of living is skyrocketed. The development has stalled, and so you see this shift of where people are headed and where people are going. And in the United States, it's not much different, but there's a lot of blood on the streets right now because they're all the mortgages are renewing right now from the low interest loans that we're giving out during COVID. And there's a lot of people suffering and a lot of landowners and a lot of building owners and a lot of people they're barely hanging on by their fingernails. It's not a bad time to buy. It's actually a good time because of what's happening. But I'm not sure that we've seen the worst yet.
okay,
I don't think that we have seen the worst. And in Canada, in the US, maybe there's an oversupply happening. I think that that's kind of the general consensus because there probably wasn't nearly as much constraint on the housing. So in the US, there's a bit of an oversupply in a lot of areas. And so you're seeing a softening. And so you're seeing these values continue to deteriorate and the rents deteriorate as loans are expiring and people can't make this up. So there's going to be a lot of opportunity there. In Canada, there is a lot of constraints on housing and
yeah,
there's not an oversupply. It's just that people are leaving or shifting, right? So the immigration is definitely not there anymore. They people have stopped flowing in and they've started to leave. And so, but there's not an oversupply yet. So you're just kind of seeing this stabilization of rents and vacancies slowly increasing and rents slowly starting to come down. So the trend is that you can't be over optimistic anymore. You cannot look at something today that is renting for $1,000 and confidently say that when you're done renovating it or turning those units over, that you're going to be able to get 1,250 or 1,500 anymore. Like that's just not safe projections, and you don't know where that's really going. And so
yeah,
I would say that the trend is really to make sure, or the key nugget that I would say is to definitely underestimate your projections and plan with equity and lock into loans that you're going to be able to service long term. Right? Bet on the worst case scenario and hope for the best.
yeah,
And that's a rule of thumb in investing anytime. But when the market's hot and things are rocking, that's a really hard thing to wrap your head around because you're like, what are
mm-hmm.
the chances that that's going to happen? Well, there's people that are losing everything right now, and they will be for a while. I think that we're going to be seeing that. So look for the good opportunities. There's distressed sellers that you can get some really creative deals on. But just don't make the mistake of putting yourself into the same position and over leveraging yourself or betting on future projections that just aren't realistic anymore. Because I think you can confidently say now that you can bet on a 5-year projection that's not going to move the needle, that's not going to increase drastically over the next 5 years. You can't bet on a 6% inflation or increase in revenue or rents over the next 5 years. It's just not the case. We're seeing a softening in the market in a lot of areas, and the dust hasn't settled. So just be smart with your money and get into something that you can hold on to for the next 5 to 10 years without anything changing. And if you're able to steadily increase the value or force appreciate, that's great, but that should be your bonus.
Yeah,
Bet on the numbers working with everything staying the same, if not getting a little bit worse, and then you will crush it because things will come back and they always cycle back. So I'm not being the Chicken Little here where the sky is falling, but the sky is falling.
yeah,
It's literally falling right now. And you're undercover. You don't want to get yourself out of cover and be smashed by the falling rocks right now, but
mm-hmm.
buy from the people who are. and make sure you're, again, if you have a consultant and you have training and you have education on that stuff, it's easy to see those indicators. You have your worst case scenario and your best case scenario, and you always, right now, you definitely want to be betting on your worst case scenario happening. And if the best case scenario wins, great, you're going to crush it.
100%. One point to add on that is, I think it's always seemingly sexy for people to analyze the micro, analyze the deals and stuff, but I think it just serves you better. I know for me personally, when you also focus a little bit more on the macro and understanding the macro side of things, understanding money supply, liquidity, business cycles, understanding, and there's a lot of indicators, of course, but just having a good understanding on a macro level, it gives you a little bit more confidence. But I wholeheartedly agree is you have to be conservative. And when times are going great, seemingly going great, that's when you have to keep yourself in check as well, because you don't want to be building on a house of cards. And it's no secret out there that many people get wiped out over cycle changes. So you want to have longevity in the game, because that's truly where the wealth is made. Because real estate is a get rich slow game. It's not a get rich quick game. So you need to have longevity to really see the wealth. So I absolutely agree with that. And yeah, that's all I'd say for people is just study a little bit more on the macro side, because then you can have an idea on, okay, there's opportunity, or where the opportunity shifts from market to market. Whether that's throughout Canada or whether it's looking at the US or looking at other markets. It's, if you can understand it on a more of a macro level, then you can look micro to see, do the numbers work? Does this make sense? And what strategy aligns with what I'm looking to do.
Yeah,
Now,
and the biggest macro that you can do in residential multifamily or apartment buildings is where are the jobs being created and where are people moving to?
100%, 100%.
That's
Migration
the
and
high
jobs,
level place to look.
absolutely. Yeah,
Like right now, I would not be betting on people moving to British Columbia in Canada. I would be
yeah.
betting on them moving to Alberta,
Alberta,
because that's
100%.
where jobs are being created, and that's where you've got a leader who is pro business and trying to lower the cost of living for the people. And it's probably the only place in the freaking country that it's happening. And I'm super excited. We talked about that before
Yeah,
before we got started here, that I'm really jacked on Alberta.
yeah,
But that's a long-term play too. Like that's a big battle that is, it's going to take a while, and it's still a pretty small market in general. But
yeah,
I would bet on Alberta 100%. Like that's where
yeah.
jobs are going to go. In the US, they've got so many different markets and so many different things happening. You got to do your research. But where the jobs are being created, where the governments are pro business, and they're lowering taxes, and they're actively trying to lower the cost of living for people, that's where people are headed, because there's a lot of people suffering, and there's a lot of people that are looking for change, and they're looking for where is the future for my family? Where am I going to keep the most money in my pocket? And that's why you don't want to bet on super aggressive rental increases. They're going to increase for sure, but they're not going to go to a place where everything is squeezed and they're getting squeezed and you're maximizing every dollar you can out of the market. Go to a place where you're going to be able to crush it on mediocre rents.
Yeah.
And that's what you need to be looking at. And people will continue to come there, and everything goes in the cycles, but these jobs that are being created are going to last for a long, long time. So you just got to make sure that you're aware of what those macro trends are. So you're right in the sense of making sure, but those are the main ones. Where do people
100%.
want to be?
Comes down to supply and demand at the end of the day. The basics of economics is supply and demand. And then I guess, to your point, like with migration and job creation, it's helping you predict where's the market headed. Is it expanding? Is it contracting? Because you need to know, right? So yeah, I wholeheartedly agree with that. Now,
What the policymakers' platforms are, like that.
oh yeah,
What is their message? What are they actively trying to put into place? Because that's where you're going to see the impact years down the road. So
yeah,
if you've got a place that looks really good on the population and the growth right now, but you've got policymakers that are in place that are actively trying to change that, or to squeeze that out, that's maybe a sign that conflicts with the market, that, or the information you might be telling yourself today.
yeah, 100%, 100%. And again, when you look at to get into investing, or you look at to switch markets and stuff, like it's sexy to just run numbers, but you need to know all of this, because this helps you perform on a way higher level. Yeah, yeah, you can't discount the macro side of things. Now, Guy, I know we coming up on time here, but I I have to ask you this question. It's one of my favorite segments. I call the time capsule. So let's imagine that you step into a time machine that sends you back and forth in time. So in this case, sending you back to meeting your 18-year-old self. Now you can't change anything, unfortunately, but you can give or receive advice from your younger or older self. So going back to your 18-year-old self, what advice would you give yourself? Whether this could be career, relationships, mindset, familial investing, combination of it all. What advice would you give yourself?
Uh, Scrap everything and only do multifamily real estate.
So you'd go right into it.
I would have spent every dime that I had getting education on how to get into multifamily residential real estate.
Got it. Got it.
Yeah. That
Basically,
asset,
just yeah,
those having the asset class that people are always going to be in, that is going
yeah,
to continue to pay you over time, that is scalable, that is applicable in almost any market that you want to go to, to really focus on that, to create the passive income, to create the financial freedom, and the generational wealth. I mean, there's nothing that I'll ever believe in more. There will be things that I always dabble in and things that I always do, and there's always things that you're going to invest in, and you don't want to have your eggs in too many baskets. But that foundation, if I would have spent the first 10 years of my life doing that, there wouldn't be much need to do anything else other than focus on raising my family and and being a good person and helping the world in whatever ways that I can.
got it, got it. So basically, building that foundation up sooner, getting started sooner, so that you could be a lot further ahead. Now, if we were to flip that over and look ahead to your 80-year-old, your 80th birthday, what advice do you imagine that your future self would offer you at your present age?
It would have just been enjoying more of the time that you have, and incorporating. I mean, a big part of where my head's at right now is in my reset, is to make sure that I'm including my family into all the decisions that I'm making, and to live a life that I can be happy with if I'm gone tomorrow. And if I'm lucky enough to make it to 80 years old, I don't think there's any other advice you would really have other than to enjoy the time that you have with the people that you love, because money is something that you give away for your health and your time back anytime, anytime throughout your life.
Yeah,
And so I would really, and I'd like to think that that's a big part of what I'm doing right now in my life. Is that was the biggest realization over the last, couple years here of what am I doing this for? The only thing that I care about is making sure that I'm enjoying incorporating my family into my everyday life and not letting business or money or success get in the way of that. And so I don't imagine I'm ever going to have any better advice for myself, because you hear it from all the gurus, all of the ones later in their years. The one thing they could do, they give up all their money for for their time or their health with their loved ones. So I don't think there's any better way to do that other than to incorporate that into the everyday life, which is why I'm here, and my family is going to be joining me, and I'm going to be looking for opportunity in South America and the US, and maybe one day, hopefully Canada again, but it doesn't matter. I want my family beside me while I'm doing it. I want to surround myself with people that are aligned with my goals and my objectives. And if I can do that, to me, that's the ultimate real estate lifestyle, and that's my goal, is to help people understand what that looks like for them as well.
absolutely, absolutely, man, and it's really really so true, and that's one of the reasons why I'm a big proponent for having many kids. you know, we I grew up with a family of five, and then we had our son. And first time parents, no, our parents aren't the side in Canada; they're all back in South Africa. So no one to babysit or anything. And he was a ball of energy, and we were like, okay, maybe five's a little much, but we quickly switched. We had a second one and third, and I'm like, the way I see it though is, if you set yourself up financially when you're older, the only thing you want isn't more money, it's just time with your loved ones. So having a big family, and the way I see it is, especially, if you're driven to build something financially, you need to keep your eye on the prize as well, and not just invest financially in your future, but invest in your family as well. Invest time with your kids, spend that time with your family, and sort of keep a balance of it all. And this is why I love this segment, because yes, it sounds so cliche. What advice would you give your younger self? But I always view things from that optic as like, okay, am I making future me proud? Whatever I'm doing now, is that going to make future me proud? Because that's all that counts, really. You don't need to be impressing the masses out there. You need to be making yourself proud and look back and say, yes, I'm happy and I'm glad that I did that, and that's where my attention and my focus was. I mean, you're never going to get it perfect, but if you try and look at it through that lens, it helps keep you in check. And when you look back to your younger self and advice you give it usually stems down to, for the masses, is taking action, getting started sooner, and just get going. And you look forward, and the advice is, make the most of the time that you have with your family, with your kids. Don't let that slip by. Be present. So it's a constant balance of take action, be present, is what it comes down to when I
Well,
speak to people.
and I, as you're talking and as I think about it, the looking back at my younger self, it still aligns with what we talked about already. My real message to my younger self would have been, slow down, just take a breath, and just really think about what it is that you're trying to accomplish. And that goes back to that plan. Ultimately, if that would have led to me probably focusing more on multifamily and creating the
Yes.
passive income to give me the ability to do all the things that I want to do. And it's really hard to, figure that out when you're young. But yeah, slow down, figure out what you're doing it for. If family's your future and all of those things, you can take your time, because you think that you have to make it. When I think about my young self, and even now, it's hard not to think that you need to make the money now.
Yeah.
It's you overestimate what you can accomplish in a year, but everybody underestimates what you can accomplish in 10, right?
Yeah.
And and that's what I think about right now. Like, if I needed to slow down this past couple years. I needed to just take an inventory of my life and just figure out what it is that I'm trying to accomplish, because I'm not going to get it all figured out in a year, and I'm not going to change, everything in a year, but I know that in 10 years I absolutely will. And I'll
Yeah.
get to where I want to be in the next 10 years, and I won't have to think about anything else other than passing that on to my children along the way, teaching them that. So slowing down and figuring out a plan when you were 18 to help figure out what path you want to be on. Mine just would have been multifamily. That's what I
Yeah.
know.
Absolutely, and I think a big factor to that as well is being able to be self-aware, because you have people on like two ends of the spectrum. If I were to generalize, is you have those that are just go 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 action takers, and maybe it's a good idea to slow down, think, and position yourself in a better way, where you you're running in the right direction, you're using the right vehicle, the right tools that are going to give you the most amount of leverage. It's not necessarily brute force that you need, but it's hey, I could get to the same destination riding a bicycle, riding a car, taking a plane. You know what I mean? It's going to get me there. But if I can slow down, I could choose what that best option is for me, put in the same amount of effort and force in, but getting there quicker or getting there more efficiently. And then on the flip side, you get other people that are just action adverse. They just need all the information, and they spend too much time just gathering, thinking, sitting and stewing in it, and not taking those next steps. So it's being self-aware of knowing what kind of person you are, and then taking the time to keep yourself in check. Maybe saying, think about it, hold on, let's turn things off for a bit, let's review everything before we just start running, or hey, let's get going. You know what I mean? But no, I absolutely agree with that, man. There's been so many insightful nuggets throughout this conversation. I know you got to get going here, but I want to thank you for coming on. Guy, this has it's been so insightful. There's so much that we could still cover. I know you have a lot to go through, man, and I had to sort of pick and choose, and really, I just went with where the conversation was
Totally.
going. But what I will do for the listeners out there is, I'm going to be sure to put all your contact info, your social media channels sort of down in the show notes below, so that people can continue to follow along on what you're doing. But for someone out there who's driving right now, just off the top of your head, what's the best place for people to connect to you?
I'm just developing my new business right now called Ultimate Real Estate Lifestyle. And people can follow me on social media right now. I've got top down investments and my personal pages that I'm doing stuff on, but there's a new, that's the ultimate real estate lifestyle is what I'm really focusing on to help guide people into the multifamily world and help them make decisions based on all the things that we talked about today. So that's the best place that they can look me up and to follow me on my journey and to learn from all the things that I'm going to share along the way.
Awesome. Well, guys, I'll be sure to leave that in the show notes below. But Guy, I want to thank you for coming on, brother. This has been amazing.
I really appreciate it, man. It's always great to talk about it, and I hope this brings value to you and your following.
To our listeners out there, if you're looking for more valuable insights, be sure to subscribe, share this with someone who can benefit, and as always, keep investing smartly. Thank you for tuning in to the Wealth Through Real Estate show. If you're thinking of scaling your real estate portfolio through new construction, then you don't want to miss my episode with Natalie Cloutier. This is your host, Alray Noble, signing off.